Hi YouTube. In the prepper community, they've got the big three and the big five. And the big three are your basic survival needs: food, water, shelter. The big five add a couple more to that: food, water, shelter, medical, and a means of self-protection. And this is what you hear the prepper channels talk about all the time. Well, I want to introduce you to a concept that takes those and expands them out even further into what is called full spectrum preparedness. But I think it transcends preparedness in general, and it speaks directly to homesteading. Stick around. Hey everybody, welcome back. All right, a little backstory first. So I got a friend who in the late 2000s had a website called Preparography. And he developed, while he was in Iraq, a concept he called full spectrum preparedness. And it's a 10-point plan to help you prepare in a complete manner. And he developed this concept when he was in Iraq. He spent a couple of tours over there, and he got to see what it was like when people were going through a SHTF situation in person. He saw the depravities of war, he saw the dislocation, he saw the shortages, and this helped him develop this concept. I'm going to hijack this concept, and we're going to take it and turn it into full spectrum homesteading. I hope he doesn't mind. Full credit to him, though I did not come up with this concept. Full spectrum homesteading is based off of full spectrum preparedness. It's a 10-point concept that helps you develop an entire strategy for being prepared. And we're going to go over these in no particular order. Some of them in my book are more important than the others, and I'll explain to you what they are and why. So the first one is cognitive, mental, and spiritual preparedness. This one in my book, I mentioned it first because I think it's the most important concept out of all the 10. It helps you develop, it's your ability to reason through problems, your ability to handle adversity, and your belief in a higher power. And what these three do is they combine to give you what's called a will to survive. And you hear about people talking on this in great length. It's proven that people with the proper mental attitude have a much better chance of survival in situations than people without it. And it's especially true with homesteading. Homesteading is bereft by pitfalls and setbacks and all kinds of things that you can't plan for. And if you don't have the right mindset, you're not going to survive. You're not going to be able to make a go of it. Eventually, you'll get frustrated or depressed and you'll quit. So having your cognitive, mental, and spiritual preparedness together is probably the key thing. In fact, I'm going to say that if you don't have those three things under control, or you're not worrying about them, then you probably shouldn't start homesteading if you're just thinking about it. The next step is water preparedness. Now, water is fundamental to survival. It's one of the first things you have to get taken care of in a survival situation. That's why it's one of the big three. And water preparedness is your ability to gather and purify water and store it. On a homestead, I've said this before, people underestimate the amount of water that you need on a homestead. So having water preparedness taken care of is very important, because not only do you need it for your own personal hygiene and health and sustenance, you need it for your animals too. And there are several different ways we can take care of this, and we'll go over these concepts as we go forward with the channel. We'll take these preparedness steps and we'll apply them to homesteading, and we'll show you how you take care of that. But having your water preparedness is very important, and it goes all the way from a homesteading standpoint to actually what you look for in a property. That's how important it is. The next one is food preparedness. Now, food preparedness is your ability to find or grow, gather, and store food long term. Now, if you watched our channel for any amount of time, you know that the food storage and food preparation are very high on the list of things that we show you guys. And the reason is because it is so important. If you're on a homestead and you don't have enough to eat, you're not going to survive. It's not going to your homestead's not going to thrive. So it's very important. Once we look at the food preparedness thing in full, you know, we're encompassing our gardens, we're encompassing our animals, we're encompassing our ability to go out on our land and find local vegetation that's edible. You know, those edible plants out there, that foraging skill that the bushcraft community talks about all the time. You know, that's part of being in a homestead. We go out and we look for mushrooms, we look for wild berries, we look for wild nuts, and we gather them and then we bring them home and we prepare them and we store them. So, food preparedness, another big one. The next one is shelter and clothing preparedness. Now, this one's very important. From a survival standpoint, exposure to the elements will kill you just as quicker than lack of water or lack of food. So it's very important. And when you're on the homestead, it's doubly so, because not only are you worrying about shelter for yourself, you're worrying about shelter for your animals. So we have to take that into consideration. It's everything from learning carpentry skills to knowing what your animals need for shelter. I mean, we're getting into animal husbandry and carpentry and plumbing and electricity and all these things. And take our house, for example. This room I'm sitting in, I'm going to do a video and show you guys what this thing looked like a year ago and show you what it looks like now. We have to be able to take care of this stuff. And then clothing as well. I mean, it becomes even more important on a homestead because you're out working in inclement weather. You have no choice. You have to go out. The animals don't care if it's raining or it's snowing. They don't care if you're uncomfortable. They don't care if you're wet. All they care about is that you take care of them, and that's the most. If you bring animals on your property, that's the most important thing you got to do. So the clothing that we wear is of very high importance, more so than what people think. The next point is security preparedness. Now, this is the means of self-protection that we were talking about, but it encompasses, you know, in the survival crowd and the preparedness crowd, that usually translates into guns. Transcends that, goes way beyond that whenever you're applying it to homesteading, because not only are we worried about our personal protection and our ability to ward off predators, you know, because unfortunately sometimes we do have to shoot predators to keep them from killing our flocks. It goes into fencing, it goes into surveillance, it goes into all different sorts of things. So, as a concept, this one is very important on a homestead. In fact, I started my my homestead security series for that very reason, because I feel it. The next point in full spectrum homesteading is health, fitness, and medical. So this is that first aid and medical portion that they talk about in the Big Five. I cannot stress how important this becomes on a homestead. Yes, we should have that first aid available. We should be able to do first aid. We should have the equipment to do first aid, trauma care. But whenever you're living on a homestead, chances are you're living on a rural property. You're away from civilization somewhat. Like for us, it's a 30-minute drive to a small rural hospital. It's probably 45 minutes to a big one, and it becomes very important. You know, I've suffered 2 heart attacks, and so health has become much higher priority on my list. And so we're constantly looking at trying to eat healthy. And I, full disclosure, I fail at that miserably all the time. But we're working on it. But you want to work on your health and your fitness. It takes a lot of energy to do what you do on a homestead. I mean, I spent the last week, and I spent 3.5 days. I spent about 30 hours. Aside from getting some help putting up a square frame, I built that new deck on the front all by myself. It took me about 30 hours worth of work, and I was pooped. Took a lot of energy. Took a lot of good food to keep me going, keep me energized. We have to worry about that. And then medical. It becomes that whole first aid and taking care of trauma yourself becomes even more important because you are so far away from medical facilities and help. You know, we have to be able to take care of these emergencies so that we can get somebody to a place where they can get proper medical attention. And so we need to not only have supplies on hand to deal with that, we need to have the skills. The next point is communication preparedness. Now, in the survival situation, that's your ability to reach out and contact somebody when you need help. On a homestead, it goes way beyond that, because not only do we have to worry about the ability to reach out and get help, we have to be able to get information. We have to be able to communicate with the outside world. And where we live, all we get is over-the-air TV, so that's how we get our news, or satellite internet. You know, if you have HughesNet, that really limits your ability to use the internet. We got Starlink. It improved greatly whenever we got that. But we have problems with our phones. We had to get a booster because we live down in a valley and we're so far away from the tower that the only way that I could make a phone call with my 4G phone was sitting on the roof, literally when we first moved in. So communications preparedness, and it goes beyond phones and internet and TV. I'm a firm believer that ham radio is an important part of living on a homestead. It gives you the ability to communicate long distances when all these other avenues are down. So the communication preparedness is very important. The next point is transportation preparedness. This is your ability to move around and get on and off your property. From a homesteading standpoint, this is very important. This is one of the things when we looked at this house that we looked at. You know, you want multiple routes of ingress and egress. You want to know what those routes are. You want your vehicles to be in working order so that you can get in and out. You know, and people don't think about that as much as they probably should. I mean, so we've actually got 3 routes of ingress and egress, although 2 of them right before they reach the property merge into one. But one of the routes is underwater. If it floods, when they had a 100-year flood, that route was underwater, so it was reduced down to 1. So, you know, people need to think about transportation. They need to think about their vehicles. You know, maintaining your vehicle is a very important part of homesteading. In fact, maintaining all your equipment is important. So that concept applies across the board to homestead. The next topic is financial preparedness. Now, this is your ability to create and store wealth. And when people say financial, they tend to think of money. On a homestead, it goes way beyond that, because we take our wealth and we turn it into tangible assets on the homestead. You know, that fiat money gets turned into tractors. It gets turned into livestock. It gets turned into crops and money. I mean, unfortunately, we still live in a world where you have to have money to be able to survive at a basic level. You have to have some sort of money. And financial preparedness is your ability to generate income, your ability to store it, whether it's in a bank or it's in a tangible asset, and your ability to manage it. And that means staying out of debt, because it's very easy and it's very tempting in today's world to just go into debt to finance your homestead. And that's antithetical to what we're trying to do on our search for freedom. So financial preparedness on the homestead is very important. The last concept is probably the second most important one in my book. It's family and community preparedness. And this is something we talk about on our channel all the time. Family and community preparedness is your family relations and your building of community. And from a homesteading standpoint, they're both so important. I mean, you being able to have good relations with your family. We hope that our children and our parents are involved in the whole homesteading process. There's channels out there that they are family affairs, which is awesome. I love those channels. And then community preparedness. That's building your community, finding that circle that we always talk about, and building your community. I cannot understress the value of having a good community around you. If you've watched our channel since we moved out here, you can see that in work every single day. We went through some hard times, and people really helped us. So family and community preparedness is very important. Now, these 10 points, when they're all brought together, form the concept of full spectrum preparedness. And like I said, I did not come up with this idea. It is not mine. Full credit to the person that did it. He would rather I not give his name. The reason why he's not on YouTube doing it himself is because he values his privacy. So he said I could do this. I didn't tell him I was gonna purloin it and modify it and turn it into full spectrum homesteading though. And the whole full spectrum concept, as far as our channel goes, I'm going to start using these 10 points to help present better content to you and more, give it more of a unified feel. We're going to discuss each one of these points, and whenever we make a video, we're going to talk about how these points apply directly to the video that we're putting forth, to the content we're putting forth. So I hope going forward that you guys find it very interesting. This whole full spectrum concept, when he introduced me to it, I really glommed onto it. It's very well thought out. And when it came to prepping, he actually had a website back in the early 2000s, and I was a contributor to it from time to time. And he was legit in his preparedness, bona fides. In fact, to the point that Doomsday Preppers actually contacted him to see if he wanted to be on their first season. And to his credit, he saw it for what it was, and he said, no, thank you. So, I hope you guys found this enjoyable. I hope you found it informational. If you liked it, go ahead and share it with somebody. Go ahead and hit that notification bell so you know when we put videos out talking about how these concepts apply to what we're talking about on the homestead. And most importantly, go out and pursue a life done free.
Thanks, Milo.